Hi there, this is Darren from Success Physio. Look, I really wanted to share with you this little warm-up routine which I love doing. It's mostly aimed at basically the upper body, the trunk, the spine, the neck. It's particularly useful for people who have stiff necks, stiff backs, that includes me. But it's also a really nice workout if you're about to do an upper body workout. And if you happen to be into sports that require a lot of mobility in shoulders and things like this, maybe swimmers, certainly surf lifesavers, paddlers, because we want to be able to get shoulders to move through full range, trunk to move through full range, and so on. I find this routine that I do is particularly good first thing in the morning. I love it, especially if I wake up in the morning and I actually don't feel like exercising. I'll get up and I'll do this routine, and not only does it actually mobilize my joints and make them feel better, I actually find it actually motivating. And that's maybe something to do with the fact that the origins of this, as far as my learning goes, was actually in Tai Chi. Now this doesn't mean we're going to be doing all this slow motion stuff. It actually might be a bit closer to Qigong because it's actually repetitive inner range movements. Now, repetitive inner range movements are particularly good because they actually seem to relax and loosen up the joints without stressing them out, pushing them to the end of range. If I do want to take my joints to the end of the range and stretch them out, I'll do them after having done this mobilizing routine because they're warmed up, the muscles are warmed up, the joints are warmed up, and they'll be much more receptive to the stretching which I might want to do to get that full range. But let me take you through this routine. Apologies if it looks a bit funny. If you do it in private, no one will notice, but it does feel really good. And as a physio, I know that the people that I've shown this to who have had stiff necks, stiff backs, I'll often bump into them in the streets, years later, and they'll say, "Oh, that routine you showed me, I'm still doing that. I love it. It gets me up and gets me going in the morning." All right. So one of the things to think about with this, now we're going to go back and forth between like about this part of the spine up to the neck, sort of down through the lower back and so on. And it's going to involve the shoulders and some really loose, easy movements of all the other joints. One thing which will help you as you do this little routine is to stay as floppy as you can. Okay, so what I tell people is imagine you've got wet hands and you're trying to flip the water off. That sort of floppiness where you flick water off your hands is what we're looking for. In Tai Chi land, they would say this is flicking the excess energy out of your body. Now, I'm a bit of a scientist. I'm not particularly into energy flow and that sort of thing, but it feels really good. So try and stay floppy. And if it helps, just stand there just now and just flick your fingers. Just imagine you're flipping water off your hands. I want you to be as floppy as you can be through the hands, and if you can be, through the elbows, and even the shoulders, if you really want to flick that stuff off. Okay, so let's get started. This first one is really about flicking this from side to side like this. Now, once you get nice and relaxed, you'll actually find that, and I'll get a bit more speed up here, is the hands actually seem to almost float up by themselves. So I don't want you to, when you first start this, like when I first started this, I was stiff as a board and I'd just be like a robot, like this sort of stuff. You'll learn to loosen up. I'm not the most mobile person, but once I've done this, I actually feel a bit floppier, which is a good thing. Okay, so flicking that water off your fingers. Now, this sort of speed I find is about appropriate. As I'm doing this, I'm just going to allow myself to breathe pretty naturally down through my belly if I can. And I'm pretty much standing, you can't really see my legs, it's probably a good thing. I'm standing with just relaxed legs. Okay, so just a little bit of a flex in the knees, flex in the hips, feet planted out like you're sitting on a horse, something like that, a horse stance in martial arts. Okay, so here we go, we're flipping that water off your fingertips. And when you get good at this, you'll actually hear the fingers drumming together. So I don't know if you can hear that. But you should find that you're not actually lifting your arms up. It's the momentum of your arms swinging through that's actually getting them up there around about shoulder height. So once you've done this for a little bit, you can actually exaggerate the movements a little bit more and actually start to almost wrap around. So I'm actually turning my shoulders as well as flipping my hands downwards. Okay, so I'm actually turning this from a plane in this direction, basically what we call the coronal plane, into a transverse plane. And we're just sort of transitioning from that, just as we feel more mobile. So I'll actually start to almost reach back with that hand. I'm not actually reaching back, it's just going back. So this is bringing in a little bit of rotation through my thoracic spine. And as I say, we're sort of starting in the middle, around the shoulders, around the back. Now, you can do that for quite some time. I would tend to do that for a minute, 2 minutes, as long as it feels good. There's no set number of repetitions for this stuff. And then I'll move on to my second part of my movement, of this rather, I don't know, this routine pretty much covers me from the top of my spine down to my lower back. Next one, it's similar sort of pace. If I show you side on, you'll probably get a better idea. You're swinging your arms and you're still flicking that hand down as you come through. So the emphasis is more on this natural sort of tendency just to float the arm forward, and as it comes forward, you'll find it will just naturally bend at the elbow. Your hand will naturally tend to come up towards your forehead. Don't think of lifting it up and taking it towards your forehead. It'll just happen by itself. So this floppiness of your arms, as you swing it through from behind, will actually just allow your hands just to curl. Now, the things I get people to visualize as they do this is imagining you're picking an apple off a tree, palms upwards, and when you come back, you're dropping it in a basket behind you. All right? So it looks something like this. Now, it'll help if you think of a long axis, basically from the top of your head back through that back heel. So there's this forward slant of the body, and you're going to actually be rotating around that long axis. Okay, now I'm not the best model of this because I'm a little bit rounded through my back, that's just the way I'm made. But if you get a slight forward lean, this backwards leg is straight, the front leg's going to be slightly bent, and that's your movement. Pick the apple off the tree, drop it in the basket behind. Okay, so from in front, that'll look something like this. Now, things I tend to think about as I do this is trying to basically sort of rotate up to that sort of almost vertical forearm position, okay? So vertical forearm position. I find it's a really nice little warm up for my shoulders. Now, again, I can gradually increase the range of this to actually be a little bit more vigorous, like I'm bounding, I don't know, down the street. So from side on, that'll look something like this. So what I'm getting there is a lot more shoulder flexion, a lot more shoulder extension, and I'm still maintaining that floppiness. Now, the good thing about that floppiness is that we're actually starting to get a little bit of traction in the joints. So the joints are actually just gently being pulled apart, and that space allows you to move a little bit more freely, possibly actually lubricates the joints a little bit more. Okay, here we go. So we've gone through side to side. Now, I haven't got names for these. I would say, let's call this a flail. I'm flailing my arms around all over the place. Forward, backwards, you can call it what you like. Apples off the tree, picking apples. Next one, really simple. This one's probably the easiest of the lot to do. You're just basically just going to start off low, pat yourself in that back pocket area, front pocket area. Okay, and gradually you can start to rotate more. Now, you'll hear there's a bit of a slap there each time I'm just allowing my fingers just to wrap around my trunk. So there's a bit of a slap. I believe, as part of Tai Chi, often you'll see Tai Chi practitioners actually using a fist and actually give themselves a pretty good whack, whatever turns you on. All right, but here you go. This is the routine. We're basically reaching around. Again, I've got 1 foot forward, 1 foot back. So I'm in a stride stance, okay? I can do it either way. In fact, I'll actually usually switch halfway. So again, you're in this stance. getting a good little whack each time. You can change feet. You could stay with your feet parallel. It doesn't really worry me. You may just find you're a little bit more stable if you're in a stride stance, whatever feels good. Okay, now again, you can actually make this a bit more vigorous. So what I'd suggest is you're going to increase not so much the speed, but as you come out of that wrapped up position, you can actually throw your arms out with a little bit more vigor. That, well, it's probably centrifugal force, or centrifugal force, which is when everything sort of pulls apart as you rotate. Now what I love about this is there really is a traction in the joints. And as far as loosening up goes, this actually feels really good. So you'll see I'm turning my head as well as my shoulders. I could do it looking straight forward, but I won't get the rotation out of my thoracic spine or my cervical spine that I would otherwise. So I actually will look around as I take my arms around. So you can see as I'm coming out of the movement, my arms are coming up a lot higher as I basically fling them outwards. And to me at least, that actually feels pretty good. So we've got those three movements. We've got this, and we've got this. Okay? Let's expand out from this middle part of the body and go up to the neck. All right, so this next section is really about neck mobilizing. It looks a little bit funny, but let's have a crack at it anyway. I'm just going to squat down a little bit here so you can sort of see what I'm doing. This first part of the movement, it looks a bit funny. It's just a tiny little rock from side to side. Now, little nuance, little things you can add to this. Visualize that you're actually working right at the very top of your spine. Okay, a little side to side waggle of your head. If you combine this with neck retraction, now neck retraction is basically that. Okay, something I probably should do more of because my head tends to spend a lot of time out there. Okay, again, it's the way I'm made. But you can sort of counteract to some extent. So basically a chin tuck, that's a neck retraction. Okay, tuck in, little double chin, face stays parallel here. You're not doing this, you're doing this. So you can experiment with varying degrees of neck retraction as you do some of these little movements. So here we go, we're waggling our head side to side, and you will hear crackles, pops, crunches, all that stuff. Don't worry, that's fine. That's just your joints moving. Think of it as scraping off the rust, scraping off the barnacles. You're trying to actually get these things to move. They're going to make noise. Don't worry, that's normal. Okay, crunchy, crackly, poppy joints, that's fine. Okay, from here, I'm going to go on to the second part. Think of a figure eight. What I want your nose to do is follow that figure eight. You can start off with a small one. Okay, now, I don't know if that looks like my nose is doing a figure eight, but that's what I'm visualizing as I move. Okay, now I tend to feel this has actually gone down my spine a little bit, to the middle of my spine. So here we go, figure eight. You start off as small as you like, and you can eventually become bigger in your movements. And if you don't hear crackles and pops with this, you're probably 7 years old. If you're 57, like I'm about to turn, no, I am, you actually will hear crackles and pops and things like that, and I actually love it because I know what that means. That means I'm actually mobilizing those joints. Okay, so we've gone from a little side wobble to figure eights. Okay, we're going to be a little bit more, not so much aggressive, but we're going to now scoop around. Imagine you've got an overactive dog that's running past you and you're watching it run past you. Okay, looking off into the distance, underneath and out. Now again, this is another point where you can actually experiment with that retraction. So as you look past, you can actually experiment with that retraction, varying degrees of it. And here's another interesting point. You're going to actually move different parts of your spine depending on where your eyes look. Okay, so if I actually am working at doing, say, that figure 8 movement, and I have my eyes up, I'm much more likely to be working the joints at the top of my spine. If I look down my nose at the ground, I'm actually going to be much more working the joints at the bottom. This goes for just about every movement. There's a link between where your eyes are pointing and which parts of your spine you tend to use. If you might even feel it yourself. If you look upwards and tip your head back, you'll find that you're actually hinging from the top of the neck. If you look downwards and hinge back, you'll find you're actually hinging from the bottom of the neck. It's a really interesting observation, and it's a great thing to actually employ as part of this mobilizing routine. So here we go again. We've got the side-to-side wobble. We've got our figure 8s. We've got the dog running past, back and forth. We can have a look at the plane flying overhead. Okay, so we've done 2 half circles. Crackles and pops, left, right, and centre. That's fine. Okay. Then, of course, we can put those 2 halves together. Some people will say, oh, you shouldn't do this because you're grinding your joints together. Well, joints are meant to be pushed together. That's one of the ways that joints stay actually healthy. The cartilage in joints needs to be massaged against the cartilage on the other side of the joint. If you don't, you get stiff. There's no danger. Our necks are made to move around like this. Now, at this point, it's probably just worth saying, yes, if you get pain as you do this stuff, come and see a physio. See if you can work out what's going on there. We can usually work it out and give you advice that'll suit your particular circumstances. But anyway, here we go. You're going to hear crackles and pops. So here's the big circles. Have a look around in one direction. Have a look around in the other direction. Try it with your eyes pointing upwards, which will look a little bit freaky, but around the other way, I'm still looking upwards. And then to really confuse my brain, body, whatever, I'm going to look down and do circles in that position, because I'm going to be mobilizing different parts of my neck. All right, that's about as much as I would do on my neck. Side wobbles, figure 8s, half circles, and full circles. Okay. From there, I'm going to go back down again. Alternate shoulder rolls. Okay. Just imagine you're doing backstroke. Okay, but you haven't got any arms. You're just using your shoulders to propel yourself. Now, you can do this forwards, but I tend to think that sort of buys into the whole notion of us being rounded forward. And too many of us spend too much time in front of computers, driving cars, sitting on lounges and so on. So we end up in this rounded forward position when we should be back here and necks up long. So I like this notion of backstroke, up and back, up and back. And importantly, not just up, but actually down on the other side. So there's a little bit of a gentle, repetitive stretch at the bottom. And as you're getting this alternate side thing happening, you're actually getting a really nice rotation through your spine, and in particular, around this junction between your neck and your upper back. We call it the cervicothoracic junction, and it's responsible for lots of pain. If you're getting that pain down in between your shoulder blades, there's a very good chance it's coming from that cervicothoracic junction. And this is a way for you to mobilize that. So here you go, alternate shoulder rolls. Okay. And now I'm going to show you one of our favorite exercises. This is called the confused hitchhiker, and you'll see the reason why. We start with our arms out like this, both thumbs up. Then I want you to turn one thumb down. From there, you're going to turn your head and look at that thumb up side. Now, this is where we get started. So we're going to turn our hands over and turn our head. So hands go over, head turns. You can see why it's called the confused hitchhiker. You could say confused bodybuilder, confused dictator, confused librarian. There we go. Anyway, let's go John Travolta. We'll do the bus stop, thumbs, thumb backwards, thumb backwards. Now, a key thing to this is as you rotate backwards this way, I want you to rotate your shoulder down and back and create some space for your neck to move. Now, my neck doesn't move a huge amount. Yours will move more probably. But as you rotate backwards, this shoulder is going to drop down and back so you can turn your head a little bit further. Same on the other side. Roll this shoulder back and down so you can look over that shoulder. Confused hitchhiker. And again, you're getting this terrific rotation through this junction here between your neck and your upper back. Confused hitchhiker is a fantastic exercise for a lot of people. If it does give you shoulder pain or neck pain, just let us know and we can work through this. Got a couple of bonus exercises for you. These next couple are a lot more aggressive, and they are definitely ones that you might want to do immediately before, say, swimming or paddling. You might have seen a couple of these before. Right, the first one, we call it the swimmer movement, and it's quite aggressive. The idea is you're going to try and go back in that direction with one arm and up and over with the other arm, quite ballistically, and same backwards again. Now, forgive me, I don't demonstrate this particularly well because I don't have terrific mobility in my shoulders or my thoracic spine. Sherman's disease, look it up. Okay, here we go. So, bounce. So you can see this is a lot more aggressive than a lot of the other stuff. So we start in a range gently, repetitively, and we work up towards this ballistic, aggressive stuff. Now this is a terrific mobilizer of the back, but you do want to warm into it, especially if you've got shoulder problems. If you've got shoulder problems, you may have to work into this over a period of weeks and months even. So whack, whack. A little bounce there at the end of the range, relatively aggressive. And finally, if we want to sort of take maybe a little bit of a backward step, we can take a lot of that flowing stuff and actually do, I just call it a kayak paddle. The easiest way to do this is to just pop your hands out in front and start by doing a figure 8 in front of yourself. Now that figure 8, you're gradually going to make bigger and bigger. And as you make that bigger and bigger, you're going to start wrapping your arms around your body. Okay, great big figure 8, crossing over at the front. Now you can see this is starting to look like a kayak paddle. Okay, now I can start to get a little bit more aggressive about this. Okay, so it's just like paddling a kayak, canoe, whatever. Jet ski. Jet skis are really easy to paddle. Surf ski is what I was trying to say. Here we go. So you can do that. Now, what will confuse a lot of people is trying to go back the other way, but it is a terrific option. So I think big rainbows backwards, big rainbow backwards, and so on. So you're just doing the same figure 8, but you've reversed the direction. And this is a really nice one to encourage thoracic extension. Okay, so a reverse kayak paddle. All right. If we just recap through the whole routine, we've got from the top down, neck wobbles at the very top, figure 8s, half circles, full circles, this flail movement, flicking the water off your fingers, this movement, forward and backwards, rotating through that long axis, wrapping around yourself, give yourself a little whack each time. Okay, and then if you're feeling up to doing something a little bit more aggressive, the figure 8s building up to a kayak paddle forwards, a kayak paddle backwards. Okay, and then ultimately, most aggressively, we've got that swimmer. Okay, that bounce at the end of the range. Oh, and along the middle there, we also had the alternate shoulder rolls and the confused hitchhiker. All right, that's it pretty much in a nutshell. Look, enjoy that. That's quite a lengthy video, I know, but it will hit the spot for a lot of you. I really love it. It keeps me moving. If I wasn't doing this regularly, I would be extremely stiff. So if you think I'm stiff now, yeah. Okay, look, enjoy.